for then come September. And there's a few other places, I think, certainly lined up, certainly Dublin, likewise too, a few more parishes lined up. So thanks to Sarah and all the wonderful work she's doing there in engaging and eliciting areas where we can go and promote. And one or two phone calls from good listeners and friends of ours likewise who are offering to help us with a small bit of promotion too. All of that is very helpful indeed. We have, please God, some new bookmarks which have gone to print. Might not be with us by this week, but certainly early or mid next week, we hope. And we've refreshed them, may give them a new look, and updated them just a little bit as well. And they're a great instrument just for spreading the word too. So if that's something again that you might like to consider, take a handful, a fistful of bookmarks and pass them out among your friends, your family, or your neighbourhood. By all means do 5 or 6. Take a half dozen or a dozen, and keep it small. And keep it just very low key. I think that's a lovely way to work. It doesn't have to be all neon lights and flashing signs. They're all well and good and very expensive. There's a lot to be said for the low key approach, going out ahead of the Lord in pairs. Remember from the Gospels, they took nothing with them. They didn't have a smartphone. They didn't have Google Maps. They didn't have anything except themselves and the faith that they had drawn from the Lord and the encounter with the Lord, that they were full of the joy of having seen all these great miracles and great stories to tell, and simply bringing that to people whom they met. And with nothing in hand, how do you survive? How would you manage? So that's really in part our own journey too. We operate pretty much on bare essentials and less than bare I might say it is true, I'm not exaggerating, less than bare essentials at times as well. I have no idea how it manages to get done, but it gets done, and mightn't always be the most polished or the most refined or the most expert or professional or any of these things. But we use the instruments we have at our disposal. So to some say it's like playing the hand of cards that you've been dealt. That's probably a more downbeat way of looking at it. But we use the instruments we've been blessed with, and the talent indeed and the gifts of those who come and very kindly seek to help us, and the Lord does the rest. The Lord does the multiplication. A bit like the 5 loaves and the 2 fish. You hand it up to the Lord, He blesses it and gives thanks and multiplies it, and there's more than enough left over. So that's certainly our hope and prayer here in Radio Maria, that there is an effervescence, there's an overflow, there's a grace that accompanies the work, and that helps and animates and blesses you too. So again, a big thank you, because we're so grateful. We see it, and we're so very conscious of it and very aware of how grateful we ought to be all the time to so many indeed who are so kind, that you pray with us, you pray for us, you tell others, you do your own little bit of promotion as an ambassador for the radio. Past a house there not so long ago, I saw a Radio Maria sticker on the window of the door, the kind of sliding door. Lovely to see that, delighted. So, and when you see these things at random, well, you know, there's a soul that has been touched, and there's a soul who's trying to touch others. So really thank you so much. It's just lovely to see. That's a little boost to us in our work here too. And likewise, a big thank you to all who donate and whose financial offerings are essential to helping us meet the bills, meet the costs, and continue the good work we're doing. So please God, John Carlin will join me at the microphone tomorrow. Tune in for that. We'll have it on the camera as well, please God. And just update us on what we call our sermon on the amount. I think it's been a couple of months now since John, at least 6 weeks maybe, since John was last with us, to just let us know about the work and the mission and the project moving forward all the time with Radio Maria. And what we find, I suppose, like any family maybe in a way, or like any business that's trying to find its feet, it just takes time. There can be setbacks and movement forward, another setback, another movement forward. And isn't life pretty much of that order at the best of times anyway, that you have kind of days when it's nice and easy and freewheeling, and then there's days when there's traction and resistance, the wind is blowing in your face, there's a gale blowing from the other side, and it's lashing rain, and it's miserable, and it's tough going, and it's uphill. There are those moments too. And I suppose the real test of any, worthwhile project, the real test of any Vocation is not when it's the freewheeling, electric-powered moment that you just plow on. That's anybody can do that. It's when there's resistance and challenges to be faced. So maybe the lesson there for all of us to be aware of and to learn and to see and realize, maybe if we're having a tough time, if there's resistance, if there's a struggle, if there's opposition, if there's glitches, to see all these things as learning moments, really, as part of the journey, but as the challenges that make the journey worthwhile. Because you can't just climb a mountain by, freewheeling up the mountain. You don't get that beautiful view and that great exhilarating feeling without the struggle it takes to get there. And it seems to be the case that the struggle it takes to get there is all part of the reward at the end. And I would hope that's true of eternal life. I'm sure it's true, in fact, that the struggle, and in fact the great saints, the more struggle they had, the greater the reward, the greater the sense of arrival. Like we're there now. It's done. It's over. There must be a terrific sense of relief and of exhilaration, maybe, and certainly when it comes to eternity. Sure, listen, why would we be looking back to what went before? Why would we even be bothered about what went before? Why would it wouldn't matter at that stage. And like all that pain or struggle or suffering or challenge that would have befallen us fades away. That can certainly happen, and that when you finally reach the destination of the goal, I don't know, say for instance a student, the way it's hard going, having to keep the head in the books and to plough on with the various elements of a course of studies, and you wonder, is this worth the effort at all? And it can be quite the task at hand. But then you get to graduation day and all of that just fades away, all that sort of, it's a lesson dearly learned and a valuable one, and a means of, I remember the tremendous advice I got, I might have said this before, from Bishop Martin Drennan. He's retired now, I think, Bishop of Galway. He was a professor of sacred scripture in Maynooth, and I was doing some postgraduate study, and he just was chatting one day, and very approachable, and he said, look, he says, Eamon, the study you're doing isn't about getting another degree or another more letters after your name. Look, he said, don't worry about that side of it. Rather, it's a time of formation for you, so that in the research and in the application of your mental faculties to achieving the result, let's say, that's where the work is, that's where the fruit is, that's where the value and the blessing is, far beyond graduation day. That it facilitates you and energizes you and gives you the wherewithal to be a sound preacher, to know where to look for answers, to be convicted in those answers too, and to deepen, I suppose, that journey into faith that we're all on, and to be able to bring that to others. So I just love the fact that he just took the time to just take me aside and say, look, don't worry about the academic. That's a nice little addition. It's not what's important in the end. So this is true then of all the various struggles of life and the challenges that come before us, and everyone has a share in that. Sorry about the mic there. Everyone has a share in that to a greater or lesser extent, and this is what the Lord means by taking up your cross every day. And to try to keep, I think if we can keep our eyes sort of fixed on the horizon of eternal life, and in that context to see those around us and the challenges that face us and the attrition that accompanies on the journey, is simply the means by which we graduate towards that. Excuse me. And bring others with us. And is it easy? No, it's not. But I think in the fellowship that we gain from accompanying one another, and it does shorten the journey and lighten the load. And if we can be there, what's that song? If I can help somebody as I pass along, then my living is not in vain. Isn't that a lovely little song? And in the eyes of faith, that's certainly true too. So all of the lovely little bits and pieces that we're doing here in Radio Maria, plenty of challenges. I see it all around me every day here. And it has its demands, it has its moments, and like everything else, like no different from any of my work in previous years in parishes, the very same. And no doubt for you in your family or your home, or for you in your workplace or your studies, or maybe for you as your years are advancing and health starts to wane a little. Again, all of these, it's a changing kind of a landscape all the time, isn't it? And it demands of us. And hopefully, please God, over time that we're growing in our dependence, our need, our acknowledgement of our dependence on God's grace, and mellowing, as people can do over the years, into where the Lord wants to lead us rather than where we would rather go. And that what the Lord said to St. Peter. There'll be a belt put around your waist and you'll be taken where you'd rather not go. And this, again, is an inevitable part of the journey of faith too. Such is the lives of the saints. So we're just, again, this generation, now is our time, now is our task, and let's not shrink from it. King Louis he's our saint today, one of them. Died in the year 1270, the King of France, Louis IX now, because there was a few Louis along the way. And he was the son of Louis VIII, seems to make sense, and the Blanche of Castile, who was the wife of Louis VIII, and she was half English, so English ancestry there for King Louis IX. But in 1234, he married Margaret of Provence, and thus became brother-in-law to King Henry III of England. So way back in the day, there was this political overlap and fostering of relations through the monarchies, and allies then as a result again against opposition or enemies. In many respects, Louis was a model Christian king. His lively biographer, the Sieur de Joinville, a soldier, not a priest, it says here, portrays him as a human being with faults as well as virtues, and I would hope that would be true. Is there anyone who, again, we wouldn't want to be hypocrites like the gospel today, the outward whitewashed sepulchres, inside just corruption. Not a good thing in the eyes of the Lord, most certainly. His long reign was not an unqualified success. Again, it's all relative. There might well have been issues and troubles, and it says here that his crusading expeditions were both disastrous, while his arbitrations between Henry III and his barons was not always efficacious either. So those great kings back in the day, again, trying to save the Holy Land from being overrun by the Muslims from the east and preserve the Christian heritage there. And it met with qualified success, you might say. And such was the case King Louis as part of that. Again, just factor in the human dimension. That's enough. It just echoes exactly what I've been saying. He ruled France at a time of great cultural achievement, revealed by the building of Gothic cathedrals and the development of universities. So this is the time, of course, of St. Thomas Aquinas, St. Bonaventure, St. Francis of Assisi, I think around the same time. So the 13th century, real time of fruitful and great saints coming forward for the Church in Europe. Thomas Aquinas and other friars were guests at his table, and the founder of the Sorbonne was a personal friend. Louis was also prominent in alms giving, in founding a hospital for the poor and the blind called 15-20. So 15 is 5 and 20 is 25-20, is that right? Or no, 15 is 15, sorry, 15-20s. There were 300 inmates there. 15-20. While his justice was famous for its impartiality, he also forbade private wars of feudal lords and well known for keeping his word in treaties and other undertakings. The most famous church he founded was the Sainte-Chapelle at Paris, built to house what was believed to be the relic of Christ's crown of thorns, a present from Baldwin, the crusading Latin emperor at Constantinople. His monastic foundations included Royaumont, Vauvert, and Maubuisson. Not sure if they're still existing as monasteries. He took up the Crusaders' cross in 1244. The exposition couldn't start for another 4 years after ecclesiastical benefices had been taxed at the rate of 5% for 3 years. And it doesn't tell me much more about what the story was behind that. Louis sailed to Cyprus with his army and joined there by 200 English knights, and in 1249 they took Damietta. But Louis was unable to control the violence and injustice which followed. It's always going to be the way if you're trying to conquer a territory that is going to be problematic. Disease struck the crusading army, which was heavily defeated when Louis was taken prisoner. He obtained his own release and that of other prisoners in return for the surrender of Damietta and a large sum of money. So that was a bit of a disaster, really. He sailed to Palestine without the sick and wounded crusaders who had been massacred, and visited those few of the holy places which were accessible, fortified the Christians in Syria, and returned to France in 1254. And the next years were notable both for internal reforms and for various political activities concerning England. So, as the writer says here, a kind of a mixed success. And yet, again, isn't it interesting that saints can get embroiled in those kind of things and be canonized saints for the good they seek to do, even if it isn't as perfect as we might like it to be. There was a story told about King Louis. It's not in this little account here. It finishes there with the other crusade that he had planned, and a landing was made near Tunis. But this expedition ended in almost total disaster as well in North Africa. So they himself and his son caught typhoid fever soon after landing, and he died not long after. So poor King Louis there. But in France, he is traditionally regarded as the patron and example of the monarchy, although it seems that some French royalists looked for inspiration to the reign of King Louis XIV rather than King Louis IX. At any rate, the story I'd heard about King Louis IX was that he had tremendous faith, and he was in his private chapel one day praying, and some messenger came in to see him to say, come quick, there's the Lord is appearing, there's this miracle taking place nearby, and the Lord is appearing to so-and-so, and come and see, this is the most extraordinary phenomenon. And he said, no, I won't go. I have the Lord right here before me. I don't need to go to see wonders and signs and hear messages or any of these things. And it was a great testimony to his obedience, certainly to his openness to the Lord, but his faith in the real presence where he was. And I understood, he was a daily mass goer. It doesn't tell us here, but it was of that order. The faith is hugely important. If he had St. Thomas Aquinas coming sitting at his table, he must have been up there, very prominently in his faith. Very interesting. But his kind of rejection of anything that might otherwise lead him astray from the kind of single-minded faith he had in the Lord, not needing, if you like, not chasing after these spiritual manifestations otherwise. Because, as you know, it's so easy to be deceived. Maybe, it could be possible that it's not, or it's open to question. And it always will be, of course, because, as I've often said here, those kind of mystical experiences are very subjective. In other words, that it's between the person and it's just hard to know. How do you discern? That's why the Church finds it so difficult to discern in relation to private revelations. How do you know? You see, this is the thing. So very good. I might leave that there. There's another saint as well today. I might touch in on St. Joseph after St. Joseph Calasanz after the music break. So do please get in touch with us here. Do please let us know. Oh yes, thanks Aidan. Dominic is going to be on live today at 4 o'clock, Dominic Megorian, and he's going to be sharing with us his selection of music. As you know, we don't have a music hour at a lunchtime on Wednesday, but certainly we'll making up for that at 4 o'clock today. So thanks, Dominic. So he's a lovely CD there, and I'll pick a track from this. Maybe the Ave Maria might be a nice one, given that the station that we happen to be in. So Dominic himself has a powerful voice, and he has sung with some great singers around the country too, Louise Irvin, particularly Jennifer O'Dowd as well, and some of them feature on this CD of Dominic's too. So I hope you enjoy this. So again, please do get in touch with us. The number is always 089 467 2000. The email info@radiomaria.ie. And give a call. Mary will answer the phone as well to 014 123456. Drop a comment maybe here as well on Facebook and YouTube if you'd like to once more. So Dominic McGorry, Ave Maria. I'm back very shortly. Dominic McGorry, and there from his CD, what's our title of it? Just says Classical Irish Tenor 2019. Lovely. Just a small selection of his music there. The prayer, of course, is there. Nella Fantasia, A Time for Us, Bridge Over Troubled Water, Time After Time. So, nice little selection there. So do join Dominic at 4 o'clock today. He'll be joining us live with his own taste in music there, that kind of classical, what sort of vocal maybe? Again, hard to put an exact genre on it for you. Music to Your Heart, it's called. So please do tune in and join Dominic there. So thanks indeed to Dominic, and well done. We had a nice little chat with him there last week. So always nice to get your texts and nice to get your comments as well on the Facebook videos that we put up, the Gospel and Homily today. Some prayer requests in there from Sharon and Claire, so we lift those up to the Lord as well. And thanks to Umberto, Susan and Geraldine and Therese as well, just leaving a little comment there too. Voce Matteo is a regular visitor as well too, saying God bless to all the staff at Radio Maria. So always nice to hear from you. That gives us great affirmation and a great boost indeed to our work here, knowing that you're enjoying and listening in. A couple of text messages that came in. I think these probably came in a few days ago. Where are we now? Yes, they did, in response to some conversations we were having in relation to marriage. I think Matthew 19 had arisen as a subject for attention during the week. We're in Matthew 22, I think now, where again the Lord is talking about whitewashed sepulchres. And these are questions perhaps from two different listeners But again, very challenging indeed. So a question: when you're in a controlling marriage where the husband controls his wife emotionally, she has God in her life, but he doesn't. The children are grown up now. Does this mean that the wife has to stay in this marriage? And what we're listening to in John, or rather Matthew chapter 19, was that how difficult it was. The apostles, like the Lord was saying, what God has joined, man should not tear asunder. And the apostles saying, look, well, if that's the case, well, who should get married, And that Moses only issued a writ of divorce for the people back in his day in the wilderness because they were just so hard of heart. It was impossible to teach, maybe. But the Lord just referring back to what God has joined, man should not tear asunder. And that principle or that teaching holds not to the misery of couples, absolutely not, but rather to emphasize and protect the sanctity and blessing that is married life. Now this question, no one should have to put up with any form of abuse in a married setting. It can be that couples, particularly the women, are especially vulnerable, can find themselves trapped, as it were, or unable to break free of a controlling situation or an abusive situation, in which case their help is at hand, and whatever help can be sought ought to be sought. And if there are issues that need to be addressed, always to be addressed, and always with a view to charity and with a view to mercy and reconciliation. That's it, and that's a huge challenge that demands tremendous grace, and it makes it all the more difficult when it is that one is striving to live their faith, and the other simply rejects it out of hand. But never should it be the case that we have to be a doormat for anyone else. I've often said this, that we don't have to put up with an ongoing miserable situation on account of the selfishness of the other. That's unacceptable, and that ought to be addressed from a very early stage and challenged from an early stage. We're having this conversation a little bit last night on UChat as well, and it was Eva brought it up, very insightful really, the necessity to set boundaries and to confront in all charity again behaviour that's unacceptable in any relationship, not just married life as well. But for the good of the couple and the good of the children, certainly every possible recourse should be had to seek reconciliation, to seek peace, and that there is help certainly available. We mentioned very often here Retrouvaille, and I think Tony and Anne are going to join us very soon actually on the radio here. They have another online course coming up in October, and they'll come on and they'll talk to us about it. Clive and Kathy were in touch as well too. They're two marvellous couples who've been through Retrouvaille and tell their own personal stories of how they had come to the end of their respective tethers. It was over, it was just not happening, and Retrouvaille helped them to come to realise how selfish they had become, and helped them then to see through the witness of other couples how it was possible to address these things and to restore peace and restore harmony and come to an altogether new trust and blessing of life and love together. There was a couple in Mayo that really struck me, I must say. They were speaking a number of years ago. I forget the occasion now, but they gave a powerful testimony in relation to their journey, and things had completely fallen apart. They were days away from going to court to get a divorce, and somehow Retrouvaille was mentioned, and they found their way to it, said, look, we'll give it one last, however they managed to keep the communication going, one last ditch effort. And they made the effort, and what they discovered was things had become so fractured and they'd separated long since, really, in terms of their relationship. Things were miles apart. It took quite a time for them to regrow the relationship and rebuild it, and to express sorrow and to seek repentance. And it just struck me as a most extraordinary journey that they went on, and they did it secretly for a time, so that in case it fell apart again, they kind of had to meet, and talk things through and work things out over a good period of time, but to do it without anyone else knowing for a while. That must have been some painful journey along the way, but showing the power of reconciliation. And what was lovely about that talk was that their daughter was there supporting them, and she stood up at the end and she said, look, I can testify to what this has meant to me, as to see my mum and dad reconciled, and for me as their daughter, this has brought me great healing and great peace too. So I would be slow to think in those negative terms, if it's possible. Sure, if you have a controlling situation, the children are grown up, and it's like, wouldn't this be the easy option to just pull the plug and walk away? It may be that it comes to a point where it's necessary to separate. I would hate to see that too, because again, how is that the healthy answer? Except that it's an abusive situation where you, simply for your own good and your own self-preservation and your own health, mentally and physically and every other which way, that would be necessary. Then it would become maybe self-evident that it would be important to keep a distance if it comes to that. But the hope would be, and the prayer would be always, that there may be some way of breaching things over, some way of commencing a form of reconciliation, some way of a constructive dialogue that allows the concerns to be expressed. Look, you can't say these things. It's unacceptable that you do these things. These things hurt me, and I'm not willing to tolerate this. That's a painful element in a conversation or a journey. And say, look, I'm open to reconciliation. The door is open, but I'm not willing to accept things on the way they used to be. And if that demands help, it might need help or support, maybe from a family member, a sibling, a parent, whoever, an uncle and aunt, somebody who's can mediate in a little way, perhaps as well, to avoid any conflict escalating. These things can be so trying. I've done it myself as a priest. I remember some years ago, family came to me, and the couple came, and they were just looking for kind of a mediation situation. I think the daughter came too, and very challenging. But here they were, they wanted a kind of neutral party and somebody who would speak the truth gently and openly. And we did our very best with that situation. I'm not sure how things transpired afterwards, but there was certainly personality issues. There was maybe even psychological issues that needed to be dealt with, and not at all easy. But it showed great courage, I must say, and great willingness on the part of the family to try to bring about a reconciliation, that they had their faith to fall back on to help them take that little step. Very, very edifying to see it, no matter, even though it was quite a painful journey they were making, but most impressive to see. So God bless all couples in that way. I see another message in on those lines as well that I might get a chance to touch in on again tomorrow. So thank you for your company. Again, it's a little bit short. It seems to pass very quickly here, so apologies for that. We can't seem to touch in on as much as I might like to otherwise. Always good to have you with us. Do please stay in tune. We'll take our leave of you on video. We'll pause now for our Angelus and midday prayer.